The broadcast is live, and we are live on the Believe in Monsters podcast for another week. Oh, man, we got a lot to get into on Believe in Monsters podcast, brought to you by the Believe Network, sponsored by the Chicago Bears, and, of course, Miller Lite, the number one beer of the Chicago Bears. Oh, but, man, we have a ton to get into, and I'm happy that we are live on Twitter. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. Make sure to go like and subscribe us on all those platforms. Pop us a retweet on the Twitter and share us on the Facebook. Luke is sharing us on his Twitter as we speak, getting it out to the masses because Luke got a huge Twitter bump over the weekend. Lots of draft breakdowns I'm looking forward to getting into. The Chicago Bears made several draft picks and brought in about 25, 26 undrafted free agents. So we've got a lot of new Bears to break down and get into tonight. Welcome into the show. It's going to be a good one. Before we kind of did talking about the draft, Chris Krogman. Great to see you, my friend. Follow Chris Krogman at Shy Bears 1985. I love your background. How was your week, sir?
Mr. Joe Gaither, it is fantastic to see you too, my friend. I have had a pretty good weekend. You know, like I've mentioned several times, didn't do a bunch of draft research, read through as much as possible of The Beast put out by Dane Brugler of The Athletic. Fantastic breakdown and a lot of work put into that guidebook for anybody who wants to look at, draft coverage. But draft was fun. I watched the first round of the draft with my father-in-law, who is a Steelers fan. So as I've mentioned to you guys, it's going to be a fun season this year with old number 10 going over there to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, they got a new quarterback.
But he can't be the guy for more than like 30 days before they go and draft another quarterback. So that was pretty funny to me. And then they took Joe's favorite wide receiver, George Pickens. So that'll be interesting.
They got real good value out of him.
They did.
Right.
Well,
it'll be interesting.
That is a good spot for George Pickens. Mike Tomlin managed Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. I don't know how he.
Bryant.
Yeah, dude, he had a lot of personalities on that team. He always does, and when they go elsewhere, they explode. But
you never heard of Antonio Bryant being Antonio Bryant until he left Pittsburgh. But Lucas,
Antonio
my
Bryant.
friend, whatever his name is,
Antonio
you
just
Brown,
mixed up their.
That's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
They're the same.
They're not real. They're not real people. They're just football players. I'm fucking around. Anyway, Lucas, thanks for being a jerk and making me feel bad within the first 3 minutes of the podcast. But go ahead and tell everybody how your week's been. How was your weekend? Did you enjoy the draft? Are you, exuberant with all of the defensive additions to the Chicago Bears?
So we're going to break down all the picks, but before I get into that, I will say it's been one of the more exciting Bears drafts just because we didn't really know what they would do with their first two picks. And like I said before, them not having a first-round pick, I think made us do a deeper dive on prospects. So it was cool to just be able to see some of these prospects going all fifth, sixth round. We're like, oh, I know that guy. Maybe I think our Bears big board had a total of 0 draft picks on it. I know Joe is like, I think we'll get the whole draft on there. Nope.
Joe had 15 picks and missed all of them.
But no, I meant our big board too. With like all of our picks, I don't think a single one of our guys got picked.
Yeah, no, I looked back at my post-it that I had sent you, and I'm like, well, shit. And like you and I, Lucas, you talked about having somebody on there, one of the like later round,
the edge rusher, man,
Dominique
Robinson.
Yeah, Dominique Robinson on there. But yeah, like you said, Lucas, we'll get into all that. But go ahead, please, because it was a more exciting draft. In the 5th round, especially for me, was just comical. It was fun to be in a Bears chat with a bunch of guys, just watching them trade down like 4 times in a matter of like 30 minutes. You're like, what's happening here? Did we get gun shy? They took Velocity Jones, and now they don't want to take anybody else.
Well, you see, Chris, what's funny is that day 3 of the draft brings out the wannabe NFL GMs who know everything on the social media apps. They know every pick that's going undrafted. They're if these guys are running the team, they would be picked in the 4th round. Justin Ross. It's like teams didn't even sign him 3 days into UDFAs. Like the dude has a major issue. There's a reason he's going undrafted. So that aspect of it's fun just to see everyone lose their minds over prospects that probably won't be very good.
We'd be multiple time Super Bowl champions if some of the Twitter GMs were in charge of the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
Who was it the Georgia linebacker that fell out of the first and then just started dropping like a rock? What ended up happening? Was it like an injury, something like a shoulder? Yeah, he didn't get a shoulder surgery. That's hard.
So,
but yeah,
I heard weird reports on that too, because then it came out that like there was some kind of like miscommunication error where he's actually good to go and he's not going to miss time. Something like that.
Like Laramie Tunsil didn't have a gas mask to his face blowing trees. Like that didn't happen.
I don't know. Well, the Eagles took Dean there in the 3rd round, so that was definitely a hell of a pick.
Eagles with the massive trade for AJ Brown as well in the instant
solid haul.
Big time extension. I was wondering, like
$100 million.
How that all happened in a matter of hours. Like looking at how like the Ogunjobi thing and like physicals and everything, like he gets traded, it gets announced, and he gets an extension all before he ever like gets a physical. Like what?
Yeah. Well, he was catching passes from Jalen Hurts. I mean, I don't know what the tampering rule is or if a deal was done before the draft, just pending what happened in the draft, who knows? Or maybe everything is pending him passing a. Could you imagine if they made a deal like that, pending him passing a physical, and then he fails a physical? Well, the Eagles just like lost a first.
I think they were holding in place to see if they could get one of those 3, Wilson, Olave, or Williams at 15. And then when the Lions maneuvered right there, I think they pulled the trigger right on AJ Brown.
Oh, I was like, I think my wife or her dad said the same thing. Like, what happens? Like, do they just get that player they picked, or do they just lose that first, or like, what happens? Like, the trade is null and void. Do they like what happens? Like, it's already this team. The Titans have already taken whoever they wanted. I can't tell you who they picked, but like, what's
Traylon Burks?
What the F? Yeah, I thought I knew it was a receiver, but I couldn't remember his name. Anyway, so yeah, what would happen to that pick?
Did you guys see what the Saints ultimately traded for Olave? It was like,
oh gosh,
dude, it was like 2 or 3 first-round picks to like move up where they selected Olave. They gave up just a massive haul for a receiver. Just absolutely insane.
Is Mike Thomas going to be back next year with them? Is he going to be fully healthy again, or do we know?
I feel like he's been supposed to be coming back for like a year now, but I haven't heard from him.
Same. Well, hey, now you got Jameis Winston. He's got his 2020 vision back, and he's his knees all better. And Chris Olave is going to be offensive rookie of the year, right?
I like Olave. I mean, it's a solid pick. I just don't understand why they had to trade all that for him, but to each their own. Let's dive into our draft. I mean, so as a whole, I think the NFC North killed it. I think the Lions, had a phenomenal draft.
First, before we get into our picks, can we talk about one thing with the Lions? What the Vikings did? The Vikings
with the guy that wouldn't shut up.
Oh well, yeah, that guy was funny. I wanted him to get off the stage, but in the first round, and then right there, top of the second round, you're trading in division picks. You're trading James
premium
picks. You're letting the Lions get Jameson Williams, and you're letting the Packers get Christian Watson. I mean, it's pretty obvious at that point who the prospects were that the Lions and Packers were targeting. And Minnesota, I mean, I understand you want to trade back. You want to trade back and accumulate picks. Okay, you maybe don't want to take pick right there, but how? How can you just give your division rival premium weapons like that? They're going to get. I think they're really going to regret that over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, as those two receivers are probably tearing up the North.
Well, just speaking on this, I mean, I don't mean this in like a negative way, but do you think that it's possibly because like the new GM the Vikings brought in Quezzy is he's like a statistics guy. He's like a stats nerd. That probably plays more, the draft capital as opposed to the actual football part of it means a lot more to him. So it's like, screw a rivalry. These numbers say this pick is worth this much. I'm going to take the pick no matter who it is type deal. Whereas if you let's just say you put an ex-football player in there like Ryan Poles, is he going to make that deal with his rival? Probably not. I mean, is that a hot take, or do you think that makes sense?
No, it makes sense. It makes sense, but and maybe it's so simpleton. Maybe it's Neanderthal of me. But if I see that daggum team in Wisconsin calling me, I'm not even picking up the phone. You call somebody else, man. We're wheeling and dealing with the other.
Well, it's not even that. They gave the Lions a hell of a deal too. It's like, if you're going to trade in division, make them freaking pay. They moved up 20 spots for Jameson Williams.
For
nothing. Like,
nothing.
Dude.
Like they got to move up in the second 12 spots or some shit. Like,
yeah, ridiculous.
I didn't look at the actual trade chart to look at how that was, but that just, man, I was getting text messages from other Bears fans like, what just happened? Like, is it me, or did the Lions just completely steal from the Vikings? And yeah, I mean, we're going to find out.
32, 34, and 66 in exchange for number 12 and 46. So come on.
That's a haul, man.
I mean, across the board, from what I've seen, Bears got the lowest grade, of the division, but without a first-round pick. And then, I think a lot of people are down on the Velus Jones third-round selection. And then they, everybody wants to play Twitter GM and pretend that they know that, they should have taken an offensive lineman in the second, or a wide receiver in the second, or something like that. So, yeah, I think you're right, though, Lucas. I think overall the division did very well with their draft picks, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, and that's on a surface level too. Like, I got to be honest, grades I think are the stupidest clickbait type of thing you will ever see on the internet. Like, yeah, it's a fun exercise, but the grades are normally based on, let's be real,
pre-draft rankings.
Yeah. A lot of people's evaluations of players is based off where they're ranked in mock draft simulators, which is probably good for maybe rounds 1 and a little bit of round 2. But after that, it's a crapshoot of which players you like. I mean, look what the Patriots did with Cole Strange, and then Shanahan goes, yeah, he was really high on my board too. So like, you never know where guys are going to go. And,
for sure.
I mean,
and then you always see
our guy Perry on Winfrey. We were all trying to get,
I had him in the first round, and he went to the 4th. So it's just like, yeah, we're only privy to the information that's out there for us, but really,
NFL teams always view players differently than writers and, Twitter GMs. And, we can all bang film as much as we want, but we don't, like you said, Lucas, we're not privy to a lot of the information that the NFL has. They view players completely differently than we do. And draft grades, while they may be clickbait, they are something to talk about, something to, get a barometer off of, and at least you can come back. And you're going to see in 3 years, 2022 draft redo, and some schmuck in the 4th round will be a top 10 pick. And you're like, oh yeah, man, we should have seen that coming.
It's going to be Braxton Jones.
Who?
The Bears tackle they took. No,
it's going to be no. Go ahead.
The punter, McGill.
No,
Trent. What's his name? Trenton.
With the 2 picks in the second round.
Yeah, let's start there. But first, I just wanted to say, the draft grades are kind of dumb. But if you really want to judge this draft, you could go off of, you could say how do these players fit into what the Bears are doing? Did they fulfill their needs? Does kind of like his draft sequence make sense and the process makes sense? So you can judge things on that, sure, but really you're not going to see how these players play, for 2-3 years down the line. And a lot of it too comes down to coaching. Just coaching can make or break some of these guys that are fringe NFL players. So Joe, why don't we start there? Our man Christian Watson got taken by the Green Bay Packers in front of us. He was a fan favorite in Chicago. So That is new arch enemy number one, has to be. Hopefully his lack of experience hurts him a little bit there and he gets thrown in the fire. But let's worry about our
everyone's
own
really
picks.
mean to him and they have a fractured relationship right off the rip.
Yeah, that dirty scumbag was already wearing green and yellow. Kyler Gordon, Chris. Shocked? How you feeling? This was a guy that was actually mocked to the Bears decent amount in mock drafts, I think, and just people didn't really take it seriously.
Yeah, I think, in the same vein that we've talked about, everybody wants to play GM and put players of certain positions on certain teams just based on, quote unquote team needs. But when it comes down to it, cornerback was an area of need. We've been talking about it for the entire last season. We complained about
Vildor, so bad.
And we complained about the coaching staff getting Thomas Graham on the field super late. We complained about who was Artie Burns filled in. He honestly filled in admirably when he did have some snaps. Or okay. I mean, I won't call him a superstar or anything like that, but he did okay. But yeah, Kyler Gordon, 1-year starter at Washington. He's a good player. All Pac-10 or all Pac-12, led the team in passes, defend, and interception. Freakish athlete, and he's a dancer and a kung fu master. So,
well, I was gonna say he had those stats
Brisker?
too. With no, that's him. That's Gordon.
Yes,
he had those stats too with Trent McDuffie, who was a top 20 pick or wherever he got taken in the first round across from him. So. I don't know. Washington is turned into a cornerback factory all of a sudden.
My favorite thing that I read about Gordon was that his tape is kind of boring to watch because nobody throws at him. And that's the kind of shutdown corner you want.
I'm looking at some highlights right now, and he stays in phase with these receivers. He's playing the ball without playing the man.
Insane. He's one of the best athletes in this draft.
Good gracious.
And we saw early that Ryan Poles definitely had a type in this draft. He went after superior athletes. Their first two picks are both extremely disciplined. I mean, 0 penalties for Gordon in his whole college career and 0 for Brisker. It's how does that even happen with one guy, let alone two, that you find, they're that disciplined. But this pick, it reminds me a lot of, it's like deja vu. It reminds me of the Jalen Johnson pick. Everyone's talking about this guy. We wouldn't be shocked if he went in the first. Why is he still there in the second? He's not flashy. He's just a good football player. That's what it is. So I think the floor here is really high for him.
Well, Jalen, it was a clear shoulder injury that kept him out of the first, right?
I don't know if it was necessary. I mean, that was definitely a factor, but he was just kind of sitting there. And a lot of people were saying it's kind of the same stuff as Gordon. It's just this guy's just going to be good. I don't know how he was just sitting there. And I feel like sometimes teams bet on upside more than just a safe player.
Well, let's talk about the aspect. I mean, of what it does for the defense, because you ship off Khalil Mack, and your pass rush is probably going to take a big hit next year due to that, obviously. But analytically speaking, pass coverage over the last decade has been more important to pass defense than pass rush. And you look at what the Bears have in the secondary: Eddie Jackson on one side, Jalen Johnson on the other side, and you got a massive hole at corner already in Vildor, and that other safety's kind of been makeshift over the last handful of years since you let go of Amos to the Packers. Thank you. So we bring in two guys who are probably day one starters that can really pair up, in my opinion, nicely to maximize what you have in Jalen Johnson and Eddie Jackson. I think if Eddie Jackson doesn't put up or shut up after what we did in this draft, I think he's got a lot of pressure on him, but I think he's set up to really have a successful season. I think what they did defensively, at least with the first two picks, were very, very strong. And secondly, before I'll get your response, I think as a fan base and as a national media narrative, everybody was so stuck on Justin Fields. We got to the Bears have to get him help, receiver all the way at 39. And maybe some fans were disappointed that they didn't go a receiver. but we've talked about it on the podcast, just how many daggum holes this roster has had. I'm pretty thrilled with what they did with the first two picks.
Yeah, just real quick here. Gordon had a 9.69 relative athletic score, so that is in the elite category amongst this class. The guy's just a superior athlete, and it's going to help him a lot, kind of in these Eberflus zones, because he's going to be able to explode and break on balls, kind of faster. Keep the ball in front of him type deal, and then break on the ball. So him and Johnson, I think, can be a really nice tandem moving forward. And I would say out of all the picks, though, I think there's going to be a ton of pressure on this kid just because he's going to be thrown right into the fire. And I mean, cornerback's a very unforgiving spot. It really is. If you don't, if your safety's below coverage, you're in some trouble, and you'll be on people's shit list like Vildor.
Yeah, I think we have the defensive coaches to work with both Gordon and Brisker to make them successful. I agree with Joe in that adding two pieces to the secondary in a pass-heavy league and division is spot on. We needed that, like you mentioned, the metrics and the analytics, which Poles said he was going to bring in a full-blown analytics department, and shows that in the first two picks. And like Lucas said, had with those first two picks, showed what kind of player they're looking for. Dynamic athletes, guys that are explosive and have good relative athletic scores. Those are the traits that those are the traits that translate to the NFL. Resilient. I thought they were Brazilian. That would be more fun.
No, I mean, both these
We're
guys.
looking for Brazilians specifically.
What do you think? How do you think the discussion played out? In that second round in the Bears war room with Matt Eberflus kind of maybe saying, "Hey, I want to hook up my defense early," rather than maybe helping out Getsy in his offense.
I think that they
were shocked that he was there.
Well, I think I agree. I think that Gordon presented an opportunity. And I think that they stayed true to their board and didn't reach for. I mean, we saw 6 wide receivers go in the first round. We've been talking about this for weeks about how many of those wide receivers were going to go. And then Green Bay trades up to get Watson.
That was it right there. After that,
that was it. That was kind of like the fall off. Then your
Pickens or bust.
You had Sky Moore still there. You had everybody's darling Alec, whatever that dude's name is, Alex, Pierce. That people are still all sad about that, him not coming back to Chicago or whatever, but that's fine. I mean, all well and good. These two picks, a defensive head coach, a defense, and a secondary specifically that struggled last year. And it kind of tells a story about the confidence that they have in Fields and in Getsy and everybody to be a little bit better than what we saw last year in terms of like getting the most out of him. And that they think like maybe more fell on the coaching than it fell on, the talent around Fields, the O-line, the wide receivers, what have you. But I think you have seen the Bears fully back Justin Fields over the last. I mean, when they first had their first press conference, it was a little cold. It was a little like, okay, maybe Justin's not the guy. And there was enough to kind of give you some pause. And now Poles has just been all about the guy. So I think that he loves Justin Fields. And if he felt that it was that necessary to add these weapons, he would have done something about it. But I'm confident the Bears are going to get the most out of this offense.
Yeah, and, I think it's finally good to have a GM who kind of stayed true to best player available, which we hear all the time, but seldom happens. And it's just like, if
Adam Shaheen was the best player available.
It was just like the Bears could have definitely reached for a position of need. And, Alec Pierce might be a great player or he might be garbage. I will say, at least with these first 2 picks the Bears had, I feel confident that they will at least be serviceable starters. I feel like they're very safe picks, which makes me feel good. It's like, hey, you can pencil these 2 guys in as day 1 starters, and they'll probably contribute decently the first year. Let's talk about Brisker. Brisker is
a great player.
I mean, safety is kind of one of those positions. I really don't like taking it, maybe round 1, but in those mid rounds, I think is a sweet spot for safeties. That's where the Bears landed Amos before, and that's who Brisker reminds me a lot of. Kind of Amos with a little bit better coverage skills. He's definitely more of a ball hawk, but they're going to bring him in to play strong safety, and he's a tone setter. His teammates just say this dude is the unquestioned leader of the team. He takes responsibility, and I think he's going to hold others responsible. Joe, you kind of hit it on the head. Eddie Jackson has it tailor-made this year to have if he doesn't have a good year this year, he just needs to get out of town. He has a second corner in front of him. He has Brisker now, prowling the secondary next to him. He has to put up or shut up this year, man.
I hope he's reinvigorated by this. I hope he's reinvigorated by the Brisker pick, especially athletically speaking, for sure. But it sounds like he's going to be the kind of partner that's not going to let Eddie, hey, man, you got to wrap up and tackle, dude. Like, hey, man, we got to bust ass to the ball. Like, there's been, over the last couple of years, Eddie's tackling ability, Eddie's hustling has really, in my opinion, fallen off. Even watching him from Alabama, you just think a guy like a high motor, a really want-to guy. He did that for the first year or 2 in Chicago, and then it's kind of slid off the cliff. I really hope that Brisker just is able to reinvigorate him to play to a winning standard.
God willing. I mean, 2-year starter at Penn State, was at the JUCO level.
Lackawanna, baby.
Per Dane Brugler, he covers a lot of ground and is most comfortable when he is down in the box and playing with a physical demeanor. Likes to drop the boom, which doesn't necessarily make him a consistent wrap-up tackler, unfortunately. So he and Eddie will both be bouncing off of running backs' hips this fall. But he does project as a starting strong safety in the NFL, and hopefully they got a good one with the right coaching, which we assume we have. I think Brisker will be a very talented, strong safety in the league.
Now, he really does remind me of Amos a lot, and it's just a position the Bears have kind of punted on since Amos left. They've never really filled it with anyone, and truthfully, I think they've been lacking kind of a tone setter back there. I mean, Roquan's a good player, but he's too nice of a guy. They need somebody to to strike fear in some offenses there. But like you said, Joe, our man Eddie, this is his year. But you know what? Also, the coaching staff, they have to have ultimate faith in the guy, just because he's kind of one of the only vets standing left on this roster. That's I know he has the contract, but there's been no talk about ever shipping him off. It's like he's here, and it sounds like when people talk about him, it's like he's a main part of this defense. So I'm excited for it.
I'm pretty excited for what the back end of the defense will look like as well. Absolutely.
So, I mean, what do you guys think about round 2? Do you love what the Bears did there? Do you think they got 2 solid players, or do you think there is some reason to worry that one of these guys might not be as good as we think?
Well, philosophically speaking, our man Ryan Poles talked after the draft and talked about, there were guys in the first round that they thought, it might be worth trading up for. And then they said that they experimented with looking back to trade out of those 39 and 48. But the way the board fell, that Brisker and Gordon were just 2 guys that they had so high on the board that they wanted to go ahead and take them. So I really applaud Ryan Polis for his disciplined approach in the second round, not wasting assets. Maybe not wasting, but not using assets to move up in it for guys. I think it was a very strong decision to be disciplined and to just let the board fall to them. And I think really they made two strong picks.
Yeah, I agree. I think both these guys are going to contribute, and like Joe said, getting those cornerbacks and safeties, the secondary lockdown for hopefully the next few years is going to be key to winning this division or winning football games, or at least trying to keep the defense off the field. So good picks.
At the very least, these guys are going to give you, because of this type that they're looking for, that these guys are going to give you a ton of effort and intensity from day one. Which is great, especially for guys who are having to go in there and compete immediately. So it'll definitely be a fun atmosphere in camp to see some of these young guys get after it. Joe, take us to our third pick. I know you are Mr. SEC, so you don't like this pick. It is growing on me, though, but tell us what we got.
I don't not like it, but I don't love it. I don't love it. The Bears with their third overall selection. It was in the fourth round, in the third
71,
round.
71 or 72?
71. They drafted Velus Jones,
Junior.
two-year guy out of Tennessee. He was a big time player at USC, and then he ended up
60-year college player.
Yeah, so he's been a 25-year-old rookie. A lot of people have had a lot of issues with that.
Calvin Ridley.
And Dane Brugler compares him to Pharaoh Cooper, another guy out of South Carolina, another SEC guy out of South Carolina. And so I guess I guess my biggest issue with this is probably my own my own perception that he could have been available later in the draft. And as we talked about earlier in the show, that may or may not have been true. That may not be the case. Just because the way it fell on Dane Brugler's beast as a fifth, sixth round pick, and how it worked in Pro Football Network draft rooms, this, that, or the other later rounds. Poles obviously went after a big time athlete. Now he played pretty decently at Tennessee this past year, and his athletic score is right on up there. I think I've leaned a little bit more to the positive side after I've settled in. But after the pick was announced, I said, "Oh no, we reached bad. That's not good." But I'm not a GM, so I don't know really what they were hearing or what their scouts kind of had in terms of what his value was with the rest of the league. But I was hearing about it, give our man Hogan Johns a shout out. They discussed it, and they talked about how he's going to be a guy who can go ahead and be a return. You can go ahead and put him in the return role. He's going to be able to fill multiple different positions in the offense. He can probably kind of play that little slot receiver, the gadget guy that you used, Tariq Cohen, out of the last handful of years. You get the ball to him and get him in space. I think he'll be effective in space. Luke will probably hit on his relative athletic score here in a minute, but you think about how the 49ers and the Packers have the Getsy system have utilized offenses, and really outside of Devontae Adams, not really a superstar. Devo kind of came on this past year as a big time player, but they never really have utilized a superstar. You saw the same sort of thing in Tennessee when their big receiver was Corey Davis. They were successful, moving the football and scheming guys open and scheming their way down the field. So, I think I'm going to wait and see kind of a mode. I think I'll be cautiously optimistic. And on the fact that he's 25, what if you drafted a 20-year-old and it takes him 3 years to get on the field, 2 years to get on the field, a whole season to mature? It's not the best thing that he's 25, but, he might be ready to jump right in and compete, jump right in and get on the field. And we've talked about it a million times. This team has so many holes. So if you're taking a draft pick in round 3, you need him on the field.
Well, yeah, being he's 25, he was catching passes at USC from Matt Leinart. So that is probably not the best from being a little bit aged. I'm kidding. He did catch passes from Sam Darnold, though, who has been in the league for a few years already. He's on his second team. But Velus Jones is more or less a running back with once he gets his hands on the ball, he knows how to he's a yak monster, runs very quickly after his, he gets the ball in his hands. 80% of his catches were within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. He doesn't, set up cornerbacks with his speed as best as some of the other faster receivers. This is all, of course, per Dane Brugler. I am no Twitter GM or NFL scout. I am more or less surmising what Mr. Brugler has in the beast. Again, please go get The Athletic and read through all of this stuff. Overall, Jones has a limited route tree and is still developing his rhythm as a wide receiver, but he is smooth accelerator with solid ball skills. That's another thing. Strong hands, doesn't drop the ball. These are traits that kind of stick out with the Eberflus
Durable
and Poles selections. They do the things you need to do well. They like with Gordon, he flips his hips, he's sticky with wide receivers. With Brisker, he plays strong in the box, he can lower the boom, he's multi-dimensional, he played very strong he's all Big Ten and at Penn State. He does the right things, or the things that you're supposed to do at the position you play well. Velus Jones is a wide receiver. He catches the freaking ball. He drops it sometimes after he gets it. He had a couple fumbles. He had some, special teams faux pas, but hopefully we don't see any of that. And he's an excellent kick returner and punt returner to start, and an excellent yak monster once he gets on the field as an offensive weapon, which, since all the Twitter GMs told us we don't have any, it'll probably be sooner than later.
Yeah, so Joe, I was kind of with you on draft night. I was like, it was really funny because Velus Jones is a guy I had mocked to the Bears multiple times way early in the season, pre-draft, and I was like, 6th or 7th round, I was like, throw this guy in there as a kick returner.
Yes.
And I never really watched tape on him or anything. I was like just going off scouting reports, and we take him in the 3rd round, and I'm like, okay, I'm a little surprised, but I do some digging, and then some bigger guys though, like Jim Nagy, who runs the Super Bowl, Senior Bowl. He was like, don't be surprised if Velus Jones goes way earlier than people. Like there was certain big national media guys who said, don't be surprised if this guy goes way earlier. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, it's almost kind of like reverse psychology with this guy. Like, because he's not a good route runner, you would think he's not going to see the field, but he can help you in so many other ways immediately as a rookie that he might be more impactful than some of these bigger name guys who, like you said, Joe, if they're 20 or 21 and they need the time to develop to the NFL, well, this guy's going to come in and give you immediately kick return skills, punt return skills. You're going to give him touches out of the backfield. You're going to give him a lot of easy manufactured touches. So, like, this guy's going to be on the field. It's a matter of can he capitalize on it. But if you say he's 25, but you get a guy like Cordell Patterson, except how they use him in the Falcons, it's a pick that's well worth it. When you guys say just 100%. A total weapon. I mean, also look at like something that sticks out to me too is like that Tariq Cohen kick return versus the Eagles in the playoffs. The dude literally almost won us a playoff game from just being a gadget player and returning a kick that he almost took to the house. Like, it's just so many impactful ways you can impact the game in those kind of aspects as like a gadgety type player.
There was a former Chicago Bear that affected the game quite well from the special teams position. So it's 100% a possibility. So
I think he'll be. Are you optimistic for his upside on offense, though?
Hall of Famer Robbie Gold, get it right.
That's right.
Yeah, I am optimistic for his. I'm optimistic that Luke Getsy and team will use Velus Jones and use him to the best of his ability, get him the ball in space. I think we're going to see a lot of screen game this year. I think we'll see a lot more slants, which you saw in, some of the highlights, even during the draft, of Velus Jones taking a slant and just bursting through the seam and just running by guys that were more or less standing still. The guy's got some explosion. So I'm not upset with the pick. If you could have got him later, which again, we have no idea, that would have been nice. But this isn't like an Adam Shaheen situation where you're drafting a guy from, Butthole State and nobody has a clue who this guy is. You're drafting an SEC player who was in the Pac-12 at two big time programs. So
he played a lot of high level football over the last 6 years.
What, 60 years?
Six.
Oh, okay. I thought he was catching passes from. Damn it! I had it in my head, and now I can't even remember the guy's name.
Sid Luckman.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the SC quarterback. That anyway, it doesn't matter. Matt Leinart was a good enough joke. Anyway, yeah, I think Velus will be fine, and if it's like I texted you guys before the draft or talked about last week, the Bears always have that what the fuck pick. Like, what the fuck was that? Are you sure? Like, couldn't we got him in the later round? Couldn't we have traded 71, started our trade down fiasco in the third round and gotten Velus Jones later? Maybe even 10 picks later, and he would have picked up an extra 4th or 5th or whatever. But it is what it is. Draft's over. Velus Jones, Rookie of the Year, done.
Well, you see, that just makes me think, this should be touched on too, is one, well, San Francisco wasn't far behind, and they could have definitely taken him if they thought Debo was gone, because the two play styles are very similar. And my thing about this pick is, if the 49ers took him in the third round, people would be like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be the next all-star Debo. He knows what he's doing. It's Shanahan. But because the freaking Bears took him, it's like, oh, this bozo was a 6th round pick, blah, 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 blah. Damn well if the 49ers took him, people would be like going crazy for it. So
yeah, nobody blinked at Belichick taking Cole Strange in the first round, even though their drafts have not been phenomenal.
Good. Yeah.
I had some Patriots fans complaining to me, and I told them, you don't get to complain. You do not get to complain over the last two decades.
For real. Give me your 6 rings and shut your mouth.
I started listening off first round picks. I said, do you know who Gabe Carimi is? They go, no. I said, do you know who Kevin White is? Oh, no. I'm just like, listen them all. I said, do you know Shane McClellan? Like, come on, bro. Let's hush your mouth.
2 final thoughts on Jones before we move on. One of my thoughts is, if you want to make the game easier for Justin Fields, what better way than to just give him a guy who can do this on slant routes and catches out of the backfield. 2, I thought Ryan Poles had a really good analogy with kind of how they compared him to Tyreek Hill. And he was basically saying in Kansas City, he's not saying that this is Tyreek Hill, but he's saying we drafted him as a kick returner, and he eventually developed his routes, and he turned into a receiver, and then he turned into a really good receiver. So if you're drafting on, athletic traits and personality, you're hoping that he can develop his routes and develop into a really good player. So those are all big things that I think Ryan Poles is actually looking out for, which is big in player development, is a lot of their own personal, how they go about how good they want to be.
You don't have any domestic violence issues in Velus Jones's path like Tyreek Hill, so bear down.
Velus Jones, baby. I'm rooting for him. I really want to see this pick pan out, just so everyone can shut their freaking mouth about it. And yeah. Day 3
from the third round, and we didn't get any 4th round picks. So you might be giving Ryan Poles a negative mark there because you didn't trade back in any of those first 3 picks. But then you went on a string of trade downs. You went on a string of trade downs, and you ended up with two fists. We'll look at them both right here. Braxton Jones, tackle out of Southern Utah, and defensive end Dominique Robinson out of Miami of Ohio. So you get 2 kind of guys, two guys from smaller schools, but you get a 3-year starter, All-American at the FCS level twice from our man Braxton Jones. You do need offensive line help. You see the first kind of instance of offensive line help right there. And then, you're trying to find pass rush. You're trying to find somebody to, give you an iota of what Khalil Mack is leaving behind. So you have Dominique Robinson as well. So 2 different guys. Dominique Robinson Robinson, former quarterback, kind of played all over the place. Luke, what did you think about what the Bears did in the 5th round?
I loved it. I think they kind of stuck to their board again here and went best player available. Dominique Robinson is some people had a 3rd round grade on him, a day 2 grade on him, just because, again, he is a superior athlete. He is the best relatively athletic person in this class for the Bears. I think he weighed in at about 260 pounds, I think. 6'4", 253. He has a 41-inch vertical leap and a 4.72 40-yard dash. The dude is just he's in like you could see on tape that he didn't really have a pass rush move, but he was just so fast and explosive off the line that guys couldn't touch him. And he just has that frame that you think you can put some weight on and teach him a few pass rush moves. This guy could be actually insane. So I think Poles purely went with upside here. He even flashed a little bit last year at Miami of Ohio in his first year playing full-time DN. So incredible pick. And then Braxton Jones is another guy who showed out at a lower level, but I'm pretty sure he got a Senior Bowl invite and was solid there.
We're both Robinson and Jones at the Senior Bowl doing their thing.
A lot of the Bears picks are at the Senior. I was going to hit on that. Yeah, a lot of the Bears picks were multiple year starters in college and all had really good Senior Bowl tape. Jones, if you haven't seen it, Joe, look it up. He was cooking cornerbacks at the Senior Bowl, creating separation like crazy.
I met Braxton Jones. I thought I saw some.
Oh, Velus Jones was there too. Yeah.
No. Braxton Jones and Velus Jones were there, but I thought I saw Robinson at the Senior Bowl as well.
He was
like
probably
all 3 of them.
Yeah,
Everybody's at the Senior Bowl. We just took seniors.
Yeah, he was.
If they were, first-year seniors or 6th-year seniors, no big deal.
Now, Braxton Jones has got an NFL frame on him, though. He's got those. We talked about the legs for arms. He's got 35 and 3/4-inch arms, so he's almost as long as Luetzko there. But
he's still as tall as Luke with his arms.
Huh?
Still, he's got Luke's for arms. He's big old Luke's for arms.
He's got a freaking pterodactyl wingspan. But yeah, what do you think, Chris? Braxton Jones? Do you think potential left or right tackle here for the Bears? Maybe people are saying it's possible.
I think it's possible. Brugler said he'll have an adjustment period, but has all the tools to be a starter down the road. Like you said, he's got the ideal length. The only thing I remember watching some things from the Senior Bowl is he pops up in his stance quite tall, but he has a tremendous kick slide. And he only played lower level competition at Southern Utah and had 1 game against Arizona State and didn't do fantastic. So Chris Morgan has some talent to work with and mold, and hopefully we have a developmental coaching staff that can now take these raw, relatively athletic score monsters and mold them into, your future Jason Peters of the league that can be good pass protectors. Currently, Jones sits as a better run blocker, but he's definitely a little bit of a project, but it sounds like he could turn out. As far as Robinson goes, another relative athletic score monster. He was in Oxford as a dual threat quarterback, went to wide receiver, transferred to defensive end in 2020. It was a sub-package pass rush specialist for 2 seasons where he had 11 tackles for loss and 6.5 sacks in 16 games. He hates to be blocked, which that's a weird sentence from Brugler. It's not like anybody likes to be blocked, but hey, some girls like to cock block. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's what he's talking about. Anyway, Robinson is a good-sized athlete with muscle twitch, body flexibility, and hand-fighting attitude that creates disruption. Again, needs to improve versus the run and develop his countermeasure, but he has exciting pass rush potential thanks to his athletic traits. He may require time on the practice squad before entering a sub-package role in the NFL. And this is similar to our guy, Trevis Gibson, last year. A couple years ago, had some good foundational pieces, and then last year really
Just kept developing them.
Yeah, you saw a lot of development come, and I think again, defensive-minded head coach is gonna do wonders for Dominique Robinson. So I think it's a solid pick. It's a 5th round pick. I mean, they took the shotgun approach from the 5th round on. They traded down 3 times in the 5th.
Yeah, they got 6 picks on the last day.
Yes, they went from starting with 6 picks to 11 total draft picks by the end of the draft. And they took their first 3 rounders. So they took their 2
they
fifths.
Had 8.
Yeah.
They traded a 6th and for 2 7ths. They traded next year's Chargers 6 for 2 7ths. So that makes sense. Joe, who'd they grab in the next round after that?
Oh, the Bears in the 6th round. The Bears in the 6th round at 186 got our man Zach Thomas out of San Diego State, not the Hall of Fame linebacker, or almost Hall of Fame linebacker. And then when they got Baylor running back Tristan Ebner, and as well as Doug Kramer, center from Illinois. And if I can just start on these 3, I liked what I saw out of Doug Kramer the most out of the 3. I watched Kramer and I watched some tape on Ebner. I'm sorry, Zach, love you, but I didn't watch any tape on you quite yet. But I liked a lot what I saw out of Doug Kramer. Doug Kramer seemed like a tough son of a gun. Seemed like in the tape that I got to see, seemed like undersized. Seemed like maybe not as athletic as you might want. Now your score might prove me wrong right there, but seemed like a guy who's just all over the place and really sacrificing his body. He seemed like he got out in front. I saw him pulling a little bit, but really just an undersized center who just seemed like a tough SOB and also just knew where to be at the right time at the right moment and just added a lot to the Indiana running game.
See, Illinois.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes.
The reason I'm laughing is because your description, I feel like, described like every single center to ever play center. He's undersized, he's fast, he's incredibly smart, and he's just a fucking mean dude. It's just like that's every single center.
Well, perfect.
That they're Sam just like Mustafer is the nicest young man in all the land. He's soft as pudding.
Shh! Don't let Olin hear you.
I will not be choked out. I have a much thicker neck than Adam.
Oh man. Well,
he's better than Mustafer. We'll say that. I'll just go ahead and say that.
Do you guys think so? I would say center is probably the most open position on the field. Just because
he starts.
Do you think Kramer could make? I mean, right now Patrick's penciled in, and they could potentially sign a guard, or one of these other guys could potentially win the starting guard job. But I think it's most likely that Kramer could take this starting center job out of any of these guys to see the field year one.
And make Whitehair and Patrick be your guards.
Yep. And they can help him out big time.
Yep.
Yep.
What do you think, Chris? I mean, do you think it's...
I think it's 100% possible. I think,
the scheme lines up. He looks great in his own scheme.
Friend of the program, Michael Gus, did an awesome breakdown of Kramer. If you have a chance, go check out his breakdown of Kramer, who has just fantastic hand placement. He continuously changes his hands. He's violent and gets his hands on his guy. He rides zone blocking all the way out. He just kept riding his nose tackles. He can reposition on bigger nose tackles and anchor. I think you could see Doug Kramer definitely step in year one, if not from jump, very soon. And I liked what I've seen out of him. As far as Ebner goes, he was like number 1 in college football in missed tackles. So maybe he's not the most relatively athletic guy, but he knows how to make people miss.
Pretty sure Kramer was another dude who stayed in college for a bunch of years. I think he was there for like 4 or 5 years too, by the way. He's also grew up a Bears fan, which is pretty sweet.
Oh, I love that. Love some people who can really appreciate the culture and really appreciate, where the Bears have been over the last 10, 15 years. Oh, because we got to go
Oh
somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah, Kramer played five years in college, dude. Another one, another lifer.
Well, I mean that's probably
3 of them.
good. It's
He's only
probably good.
23.
Braxton Jones, you got Velus Jones. Brisker was a multiple year college player because he played 2 years at JUCO, 2 years at Penn State. That's 5 guys. I mean, the Bears, there's definitely a trend there with guys they're drafting who have developed multiple years in college.
See, they just didn't sign free agents because they drafted guys that were more or less earning their second contract in the NFL.
What were you saying about Ebner, Chris? You got Ebner.
No, he's he was only a part-time starter at Baylor, but he did have the number 1 missed tackle percentage in the league. He ran a wide zone scheme behind
kick returnees
behind Abram Smith at Baylor. His rushing production did increase in his final season. He was most productive as a receiver and return man. So just another weapon type for Getsy. The other thing I didn't touch on was Getsy was one of the most excited dudes in the room when they drafted Velus Jones. Not to say, that necessarily means anything, but somebody did talk about how geeked up Getsy was to get Velus Jones.
Did we also talk about how Fields and Poles sat down and watched film, and Jones was one of the guys that he identified as someone he would want to play with? I mean, I think that's important too.
We definitely did not talk about that.
But hey, Poles doesn't like Fields. He's just throwing him to the wolves.
For sure. Zach Thomas.
If I could have a little piece of that PFF Sam. Oh,
Zach Thomas, one of the best run blockers in the nation.
Yeah, and ran a zone. He's a nimble mover with drive blocking skills. He's not explosive, but he is. He seems like a nasty type of player. Potentially better suited at guard because of his lateral range and tendency to lose his balance. Makes him sound like he falls down a lot, but
Kramer does that
fine.
too.
Kramer does reach a little bit, but so Lucas, you talked about this a little bit pre-show and throughout, after the draft that, every tackle is labeled as a chance to move inside the guard. And while I kind of agree, I think you're going to have that especially at these lower levels or later round picks. But one thing I want to call out is the success that Eberflus has, been a part of in at Indianapolis, I believe it was, in moving guys around or seeing how guys can transition, and Poles being a former offensive lineman, Ian Cunningham having the success he's had at offensive line, I think can identify these guys that can be moved around. And I'm not a big fan of moving guys, every which way and the other. Kyle Long played 3 different positions for us, but I am a fan of identifying guys that can, kick inside and be effective. And, it sounds like Zach Thomas and also 7th rounder Jatir Carter are 2 guys that could be kicked inside and play very well at guard. But I think as far as these 6 rounders go, Doug Kramer is the one I'm most excited about with his potential with the team next year.
Right here, Zach Thomas is yet another 6-year college player, 2016 to 2021. And also another guy that was a team captain, which I think is important. I think Kyler Gordon, I think he might have been a team captain, and Jaquan Brisker were also there's definitely a trail of players that you can tell that Poles likes. He likes the leaders. He likes the guys who have been in college. He likes these super athletes, and, they have to have a certain demeanor about them. So definitely interesting. Tristan Ebner, you hit on him a little bit, Chris. I think you're right. It's just another weapon for Fields. I think he has a path to make the team as a kick returner. Ebner is probably a better kick returner than he is a punt returner, and Velus Jones is probably a better punt returner than he is a kick returner. So maybe they split those duties, but let's be real. I mean, David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert are nice backs. they're not really a receiving specialist. Like the Bears kind of need their Tony Pollard, if you will, to kind of just go out there and line them up in the slot or wherever. I mean, they need receiving help. And this is what teams like the 49ers do. They have a stable of running backs who can do a bunch of different things. And like, look at the 49ers receiving core. I mean, George Kittle, I think, is a really good player. And I don't think he's like this crazy. I don't think they have any crazy elite receiver per se, but they have a lot of weapons. They have a lot of guys who can do a lot of things well. And that's kind of what the Bears are looking for here, which I'm a fan of. You don't need that kind of alpha Randy Moss receiver to be successful necessarily if you have a good scheme, a good game plan, and a lot of athletes to get it done. So,
and a running game.
I'm interested. Absolutely. Yeah, I think the Bears running game this year should be insane with Herbert and Montgomery. And if you can sprinkle in some nice pass catching ability in there, it should be very interesting.
Joe, what did the last and 7th round look like for our Chicago Bears?
The 7th round brought the Bears 3 more picks. The Bears, we touched on the guard from Southern University, Jatir Carter. Jatir?
Jatir?
I think another Senior Bowl guy.
Jatir Carter, excuse me. And then we took a safety from Cal, Elijah Hicks. And then we brought in a punter, Trenton Gill. So trying to, play that special teams card with the last pick. But really the Bears maybe didn't trade back at the points where I thought, in the early rounds. But they did, what they did in the 5th round and moving on back a handful of times, ended up accumulating a number of draft picks in that 3rd day. And that's what you got to have in that 3rd day. Take more bites at the apple, pick guys, throw a bunch of crap on the wall and see what sticks. I was overall really happy with the approach to the draft.
I think especially like what you saw was Poles and Cunningham just really fall in love with the later round offensive line talent, and they just wanted as many, darts at the dartboard, if you will, or lottery tickets, or whatever the case may be, whatever metaphor you want to use. I think that's what they were trying to do here. Jatir Carter is another one that seems like he could develop over time, maybe be on the practice squad this year and learn from Chris Morgan and all pro Cody Whitehair and be a piece of the puzzle next year. Be interesting to see how, if and how these late round offensive linemen shake out, as compared to what, we bitched about Pace doing with, Latavius Simmons and
Arlington Hambright,
and other previous regimes in their late round offensive line picks. So we'll see if we don't get another J-Web Nation or if we get a Jason Peterson. It'd be nice to be the latter.
Jason Peterson.
Leno was a 7th rounder.
Oh, Jason Peters, whatever, bro. You're so, dude. I'm gonna mute you. That's what I'm gonna do.
Who was there was a player in the Beast that Brugler compared to Dakota Dozier. Was it Carter?
It was Carter. Only, dude. It's simply because he had him moving inside the guard.
Yeah, it's just
and Dozier went to Furman and Carter went to Southern. So that's a pretty.
It's just funny because right now Dozier's our guard.
It's nice, dude. That's one. Oh my god, I'm not dealing with you and your bullshit. Dozier's our guard.
Who was our next pick after Carter?
Fucking May.
Hicks, Elijah Hicks, free safety. Cal.
That's right. So this was funny. We drafted him. Nobody knew who he was, but he probably had the best video that the Bears released. This guy, you could tell, is just freaking just off the walls, excited to play football and be a part. He was doing push-ups on his deck behind his back, just yelling that he got drafted. And he's like, I'm gonna bring the energy. I'm like, dude, this guy's awesome.
Let's do it.
Even if he's just a camp body, he's just like. But then I looked up his tape, and he actually had a really solid season. He turned the ball over multiple times. I think he had 4 forced fumbles, 3 picks at Cal last year. He's definitely a big hitter and, could be a key special teemer. So you
Eddie
never
Jackson's
know.
replacement.
Who was the wide receiver that I freaking hated? Always brought the Bellamy. Bellamy. We need a new Bellamy to bring some energy.
Well, you know what, Joe? This was a great point that someone they brought up on Hogan Johns today. Was just like they were saying how one of Ryan Pace's best draft picks was DHC.
Mm-hmm.
Houston Carson he's on his second contract now. He's a fantastic special teamer. He's developed into just a fantastic player as like a rotational player off the bench, special teams, whatever you need. I mean, I wouldn't say he's like a great player overall, but he does a lot of things well enough to find the field and have a long NFL career. So
this guy's got a nice little 4-minute highlight tape on YouTube.
Yeah, well, my point is we're all just trying to find players like that. Can you contribute on special teams?
Mm-hmm.
Can you do the basics well? Like if you can find a guy like that every now and then, such a big help for your team. And let's be real, the Bears, I mean, they needed to sign 20 to 30 UDFAs. I mean, so.
Do you know how long that Elijah Hicks played at Cal?
6 years.
5 years.
Yeah. I'm telling you, dude, it's a trend. A lot of these players have been in college forever. I mean, even Kyler Gordon, he was a special teams player for his first few years at Washington, and I think he won special teams player of the year there before. All these guys have long track record. None of these are like one and done players. Then we drafted a punter, right?
Punter.
Trenton Gill.
Trenton Gill.
I got nothing on this guy, really.
4th rated punter by Brugler. He's not the mega punt kid from San Diego State, which
he has a big leg though. This kid does have a pretty big leg.
Yeah. So that wrapped up the 7th rounder. He's a punter. I don't even know.
Spending too much money on punter the last handful.
I don't even know who our punter is.
Ryan Winslow.
Ryan Winslow. I don't
never heard of
who
him.
That is okay. Cool. We don't have
Kellen Winslow's dad.
Best kick holder in the National Football League is now in that Wisconsin-based team. So unfortunately, we won't see Pat O Megapunt. What did they call him?
Do you remember his combine?
Yeah,
Combine
what did they?
Was insane.
Yeah, he benched like 25 times or some shit.
Dude, his combine was like nuts. Better than Clowney's.
Punters are weird.
What was his nickname?
Mega Punt.
Was it Mega? I thought that was the guy. What are they calling the guy that came out this
Punt
year?
God.
Punt God. Punt God.
No, O'Donnell was the original dude.
They don't have guys that can coffin corner anymore. If that guy could kick 80 yards and drop it like inside the 5, could you imagine?
I don't think his accuracy is very good. I think
That's a legit weapon.
I think he punts and prays, but
what if he has like a bionic leg and we just don't know about it?
It's like one of those. It's like one of those drivers that drives for you. It's like a hammer that smacks your golf ball.
Or that robot that was like they had at a basketball game that made a free throw, a 3-point shot, and a half-court shot in like 30 seconds.
On the golf course.
A robot?
Heck yeah.
Anyway, so how do you guys want to break down all the UDFAs? There are 26 of them. There's multiple that I want to talk about. There's at least.
The only guy I know about is Jack Sanborn because we had him mocked to the Bears a few times. And I don't know how he didn't get drafted. He's kind of just like your prototypical middle linebacker, like old-fashioned linebacker who's not very good in coverage, like at all. But he just dominates the run game and
stumper
and does all the dirty work. So I like it. I think he's got an outside chance to make the team and possibly be a key special teamer / potential Sam linebacker. We'll see.
What about Master Teague? That's a name that a lot of our fans might know. The running back out of Ohio State, not a very great athlete, but he was utilized at Ohio State pretty decently, I feel.
I didn't really understand that one. I mean, Chris, you can probably break this down further, but from what I understand, he's not a great pass catcher, and his skill set seems very redundant for what we have in Herbert and Montgomery.
So he backed up J.K. Dobbins, Trey Sermon, and Travion Henderson. Finished his OSU career with a 5.5 yards per carry. He's built like a tank to run downhill, but also has the speed of a race car to out-leverage pursuit. So
who is making this scouting report?
Dane Brugler.
What did you just say? He's built like a what?
Tank.
And he's a big-bodied guy. He is a big.
He's built like a tank, and what else?
He looks like Maurice Clarett.
And he has the speed of a race car. I don't really understand the problem here, Lucas. It's kind of like describing you, man. Short and thick and fast as F.
It's just a weird description to put in a scouting report. Did he have him projected to get drafted?
Oh, shit. I didn't pull that. Give me 1 second. I can find that.
Oh, I thought you were reading it right out of the beast.
Well, I took out all the Bears players.
I'll be interested. I do remember.
Priority free agent. He had him as a priority free agent.
All right. So he kind of hit that one. Yeah, no, I just the fit doesn't really make a lot of sense for me for what the Bears have.
Straight line speed, explosive. He's not slippery or shifty. He's thick framed, but can be run over in pass pro because of his poor base and fundamentals.
But I thought you told me he was built like a tank.
I just said he has poor fundamentals. Yeah, when he's running with the ball, but if he's just standing there, he's like a brick wall that just gets run over by other tanks.
When he's pass blocking, he's like a tank with a broken wheel.
They're called tracks. I want to talk about Chase Allen.
Never heard of him.
Tight end from Iowa State. He's a 4-year starter. He had the YN duties under Charlie Kolar's. With Charlie Kolar in Tom Manning's scheme, lining up inline and detached. Wasn't highly targeted, but played a lot of football. Over 2,000 snaps, was productive when given opportunities. Coordinated athlete, decent speed. Lacks play strength or body control as a blocker to stay connected and set the edge, but consistently works to reestablish his body leverage. Doesn't have distinguishing trait that helps him pop on film, but his game shows equal parts toughness and intelligence with balls skill and to gain the trust of an offensive play caller. He has a chance to stick as a rotational player. So I thought it was an interesting pickup. A lot of people were buzzing about him when they picked him up as an undrafted free agent. Like we said, they had 25 other dudes, 3 or 4 wide receivers.
I was going to say
some more linebackers and corners.
I think it should be noted that just like Paul spammed O-line in the draft, he kind of did the same for wide receiver and UDFAs, which will be interesting. I personally would have liked to see just one more wide receiver drafted a little bit earlier, but I'm not going to get too upset about day 3 picks.
Earlier than round 3 or just
like I would have liked to see a day
5.
3 wide receiver. Yeah.
You wanted what was that dude you wanted? Shakir?
Shakir. Yeah. I feel like he's going to be a solid player in the Bills, but we'll see.
Well, that's not fair because, he's going to a good system.
Well, that's what I mean. I think
quarterback. Hard to judge.
It's kind of my argument about Pickens is like he'll probably be really good in Pittsburgh just because he's going to Pittsburgh, but it's hard to say if he would have the same success elsewhere. You can go down that rabbit hole for anywhere, but
Pittsburgh's developed wide receivers.
That's what I mean, and handled personalities or whatever. It's just been they're a factory for that kind of stuff. So
they've only missed on one that I can think of. I can't even remember the dude's
Claypool.
name. Would you say he's a miss yet? I mean, it's year 3.
He's kind of fringing on. I mean, he shows flashes, but it's never been like.
No, there was a first round dude. I want to say from Tennessee that they took a while. It's been a long time, but he was total flop. He was terrible. Never. I don't think he ever made the field. Let me see if I can find him.
Who is that wide receiver everyone's getting excited about? the D2 guy. That the one I said was the next Tanner Gentry.
Henry Litwin from Slippery Rock.
Slippery Rock, baby. They put out a lot of pros. That's they were in my college football division.
And you'll whip their tail every year.
No, they had a very solid football team. I think they What's his name? Henrik Lundqvist?
Henry Litwin. Litwin.
He's over here dropping hockey players, dude.
Ooh, I got a 3-minute highlight tape of him that I'm watching now on YouTube. Let's see how good he is.
And look at the username on it, dude. He made it himself.
This one is from Draft Diamonds.
Oh no, there's one that's just like his homemade tape, and it's just like the name on it doesn't have a profile picture. It just says
Shut up.
It just says Henrik Lundqvist or whatever his name is at the bottom.
Well, if Draft Diamonds is making a video, you know this guy's good.
Dude,
he's gonna be the Tanner Gentry, dude.
First catch looks just like him. Oh yeah, look at him. He's a baller, baby. Look, went up and high pointed that ball, took this slant to the house. Oh, he hurdled that guy.
Oh, look at him hurdling that plumber.
Henry Litwin, I'm buying your jersey.
Yeah, guy wasn't a first-round pick. I was thinking of Limas Swede, second-round pick out of Texas.
I've never heard of him.
He was terrible. But man, the list in Pittsburgh goes on and on. You know, Randall L., Santonio Holmes, and Mike Wallace, Antonio Brown, Manuel Sanders,
Martavis Bryant,
Marcus Wheaton. Don't forget about Marcus Wheaton, bro.
I almost feel like. Do you think?
I'm joking. Martavis Bryant. Martavis Bryant was more of a.
He had a flash though. He was like kind of like Claypool, where he had like one pretty good year and then he kind of just fell off.
They got that guy.
So he couldn't stay out of his own way.
Sammy Coates.
Sammy Coates, Marcus Wheaton, baby.
Deontay Johnson is the next one.
Oh, he hurdled another guy. That's 2 hurdles in this highlight tape.
Two, not just one.
Future All-Pro.
First guy was a plumber. That guy was a freaking painter.
Hey,
I mean, they're playing Minnesota State in this tape.
Painters carry around long poles to trip people with.
I mean, they're playing in the snow, so he's accustomed to the Chicago weather. He's ready.
Who is this guy?
Lundqvist.
Henry Litwin.
Look for his homemade highlight tape, dude.
Oh, he just juked that guy out of his shoes.
What about Savon Scarver? That name is sick. Landon Lenore. Those guys have
That's
dope names.
Actually, that is someone that people are saying.
Oh, you know he's good. He's not even wearing gloves.
A sneaky UDFA.
The Lenore guy?
Yeah, Lenoir.
Lenoir? That's how you say it?
Lenoir.
I'm not saying it like that.
I don't know.
Lenore.
I don't know any of these UDFAs.
Landon Lenore, Southern Illinois. Let's see.
UDFAs, I think, are hilarious. How people like just find these random dudes and hype them up. It's just like most of the time, it's just like the best of the best UDFAs turn into like a Mustafa.
Yeah, I agree.
Most of the time, like that's what which is like fine. I mean, that's great.
Turn into
Great
Ryan
story.
Nall.
I think there's more UDFAs in the league than any other like round other than first rounders. I think are like. It's a lot.
That's just proximity. That's just like what's the math term? Because our frequency is so much more. You're taking so many more UDFAs than first rounders, second rounders, third rounders.
The mode.
Yeah.
The most occurring.
Yeah.
Joe sings.
This Lenore kid can play too. Shit.
All right, Joe, give me your 60-second wrap up of the draft, and then you're singing the song.
All right.
No. Actually, hold on. Before we do that, what do the Bears have left to do? There's still some free agents to sign. Give me a player or two you would like to see them sign, and your final thoughts on the draft. Chris, you go first.
He already got signed. I wish they would have signed Trey Turner, but that's okay.
Got any backups?
J.C. Treader.
J.C. Treader. Okay. What about the dude the Eagles just released, Herbert?
He didn't get released technically yet.
He's going to waivers.
potentially, or Eric Flowers. Is he still hanging out there?
Eric Flowers is still
One of
hanging out.
a vet lineman would be a bad addition. Lucas is gonna have a complete fucking meltdown if we go into the season with like Dakota Dozier as his as our lad's fucking depth chart number one, and one of these 6th or 7th rounders as the guy who's probably really going to start. Lucas is going to lose his fucking mind. But if you go out there with no shit, if you go out there with like a Borum at left, Whitehair at left guard, Kramer at center, Patrick at right guard, and Jenkins at right tackle, do you think that could be a formidable unit?
Yeah, I think it would be fine. I still don't think it would be necessarily. It'd probably be like right about average or probably below average, but it wouldn't be like terrible.
Average to below or above average is probably okay. It won't get Justin killed.
That's kind of where I'm at. And the draft, what are you concluding thoughts on that?
Could have been better. Could have been worse. We don't know. We don't have a fucking clue about any of these guys. I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see. You know what? I'll tell you this. My favorite draft pick is Brisker. I'm excited to see this kid in the secondary finally have a strong safety next to Edward Jackson to be good. The guy I'm most excited about that could kick inside to guard and cause some problems would be Braxton Jones. And I think he's another one that, obviously Kramer we've talked about, but if it's Patrick at center, Kramer's supposedly center locked. He can't really move to guard. So Braxton Jones could be the guy that is that right guard. If
you're thinking of Jones or Thomas? Jones is the dude with the really long arms. I don't know if do guards ever have long arms? I don't know. They both could probably play there. Who cares? That would be sick.
I thought that was the other dude he talked about. Nope, you're right. My bad. Thomas.
Yeah,
Zach Thomas. Thomas is the guy I was thinking of. My sincerest apologies. All these fucking linemen that they drafted. I was told that they weren't concerned about offensive linemen, but hey, I don't know, 4 of them in 2 rounds, and I don't know.
But it was day 3. If he can hit one of them, dude, that is a huge success. Just from the fact that he traded back all those picks, and if he can just hit one of them, and maybe you get a backup out of another, success.
Bangers. Lucas, what are your thoughts on the Chicago Bears draft?
Solid. I really like what they did to address need. I think they have a lot of needs, so it's hard for them not to address it. They could have taken. I'm happy they just took good football players. Like I said, it wasn't like, oh, we need to fill a wide receiver, so I'm going to take one at 39. They took the best players available. I think they got 2 guaranteed starters on there. Probably 3 I'm going to count Velus Jones because he's going to start on kick return at least. And then, like we said about the linemen, I love the approach of just day 3, you are trading back to gain as much capital as possible. You took 8 picks on day 3, which I think is incredible. And you're basically you're taking a handful of darts and you're saying, I hope one of these guys sticks. And like I said, he's drafted specific traits and over top of anything else. So these guys can definitely develop into something. If you ask me, my favorite pick is probably honestly Dominique Robinson. I'm really excited for that pick. I think the Bears, I know a lot of people say it, I think he could be a super solid steal. The player I'm most excited to see in this draft is honestly, the more I watch him, I'm excited to see Velus Jones in this offense, and I really just want to see him prove people wrong. If I had to pick one of those linemen to be the most successful, I am going to go with Braxton Jones, Chris. I feel like he could have a potential left tackle career down the line. Joe, what do you got?
Well, I thought it was a masterclass, really, from Ryan Poles in his first draft in approach. And when it comes to approach, I think that it was really comforting from a Bears fan perspective to feel like my general manager has a plan. He's disciplined enough to execute it. He knows, like we've talked about, the traits, the great athleticism, the experience, the leadership. I really am encouraged with the direction that we're heading into. I feel like we might have got a good one. We might have got a real good one with the general manager. Now it remains to be seen how the draft class will play out. We're probably going to have to revisit this in a year or two. But from a week after, I'm feeling pretty happy with the approach and the execution of the approach. I'm with Chris with Brisker is probably my favorite prospect of the bunch, just for the simple fact of what he does for Eddie Jackson, and I've got a big soft spot for Eddie Jackson. But I'm pretty happy with his approach. We didn't overspend in free agency. We were really smart and analytical in the draft. It seems like this second wave of free agency, the Bears might make some moves. And shoot, for all the people complaining about wide receivers, there's still a lot of wide receivers out there that are really experienced players. You want to spend some money? You got Jarvis Landry out there. You got Will Fuller V. You've got your man Julio Jones, Cole Beasley. There is a lot of wide receivers out there, and those are just like the top 4 or 5 names. You can go even further down and find some experience and find some
Emmanuel Sanders.
Perfect. Yeah, Emmanuel Sanders would be a good one.
Why no, Chris?
He's 35 years old, dude.
1 year.
One year. He plays all wide receiver positions. He can play X. He can play slot.
I'd rather have Will Fuller.
Maybe it'd probably give you more upside on Will Fuller, and probably could make a case that if he does well, you could extend him. If you bring in Emmanuel Sanders, you're pretty much, this is a 1-year guy, and we're gonna ship him off. But the point is, there's a lot of wide receivers still out there that can help Justin Fields, and really, I was pretty pleasantly surprised with the approach to the draft weekend. Bear down, Chicago Bears. Oh, was that too early? You want to make a point?
No, you're good. Keep saying
Make every play, clear the way to victory. Bear down, Chicago Bears. Put up a fight with the might so fearlessly. We'll never forget the way you thrilled the nation. With your T formation, bear down, Chicago Bears, and let them know why you're wearing the crown. You're the pride and joy of Illinois, Chicago Bears, bear down.